Okay, so today we're going to dive right into something pretty big, right? A legal battle that could have some huge implications for oversight in our government. We're talking about the lawsuit filed by 8 inspectors general against, you guessed it, the Trump administration.
Yeah, this is a really important area to understand. I think everyone has probably heard about inspectors general by now, but to recap, they're basically the internal watchdogs in federal agencies.
Right, they're kind of like the detectives. They're the cops on the inside, right? Working to prevent fraud, all the bad stuff, waste, abuse, corruption. But the key thing to remember is that their role is nonpartisan. It has to be. They're focused on just pure, straight up oversight, no politics involved.
Exactly. And what we're looking at today is really about President Trump's decision to fire a bunch of these IGs. He actually fired 17 in total, but this lawsuit is coming from 8 of them. They're claiming these dismissals were unlawful.
So they're fighting back. They're not taking this lying down.
Right. And they're basing their argument on two things: process and justification. So they're saying, first of all, that Congress wasn't given the proper 30-day notice that's required by law before these firings happened. And on top of that, they're also arguing that the reasons given for getting rid of them just didn't cut it legally speaking.
Okay, so that's the overview. We're diving into this legal challenge, looking at our sources, and trying to make sense of all the legal stuff in a way that everyone can understand.
Right. No need to get lost in legal jargon.
Exactly. So let's start with what's driving this lawsuit. We've got this article here from The Hill. 8 fired government watchdogs sue Trump administration. It kind of paints the initial picture for us.
Yeah, and I think one thing that jumps out right away is this statement from the IG's lawyer, Seth Waxman.
Oh, yeah, he's a former Solicitor General, served during the Clinton administration, so the guy definitely knows his way around the legal system.
Right, lots of experience. And he's saying basically that what the Trump administration did was try to just eliminate impartial oversight altogether. He's very clear about this. He says it's contrary to the rule of law. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, he's not mincing words.
Not at all. And it shows just how fundamental this issue is for the IGs, the principle they're fighting for here.
And it's important to remember, we're not talking about some obscure little offices these IGs were overseeing. These are some pretty big agencies. The Departments of Defense, State, Labor, Education, Agriculture.
Right, and Veterans Affairs, Health and Human Services, even the Small Business Administration. It's a lot.
Yeah. And if you think about the big picture here, these agencies are responsible for handling huge amounts of taxpayer money. According to the lawsuit, we're talking over $5 trillion in funds every year. Plus, they oversee millions of federal employees. The lawsuit says over 3.5 million.
So the scope of responsibility these IGs had was just enormous. And that means the potential impact of removing them is also huge.
Absolutely. And as the lawsuit points out, their role is all about accountability. They're that independent check on these powerful agencies. They're the ones who make sure things are running properly. And they're also crucial for whistleblowers. You know, those people inside the agencies who see something wrong and want to report it. The IGs protect them.
Right. Without them, it's a lot harder for those people to come forward without fear of, getting in trouble.
So they really are crucial for keeping things transparent.
Yeah. It raises the question of how we maintain accountability in government. These IGs are a fundamental safeguard. They promote transparency, deter abuse of power. They're really important.
Okay, so to understand the legal side of this, we got to look at the actual law these IGs are citing. That's 5 U.S.C. Section 403B.
Yeah, this is the heart of the matter. This law lays out the rules for how you're supposed to remove an inspector general. It's very clear. It says that if the president decides to remove one, they have to give reasons in writing to both the House and the Senate at least 30 days before it happens.
So that 30-day notice is super important. It's a protection built into the law.
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting, because one of our sources, a transcript from a Glenn Kirshner YouTube video, points out that these firings happened about 3 weeks before the date of the video. The video is from around January 24th, 2025.
So if those dates are right, it sounds like the 30-day notice just didn't happen.
Right. That's a big problem for the Trump administration legally. It's a hurdle they'll have to explain.
But it's not just the timing, right? The law also says what kind of explanation you need to give.
Yeah, you can't just say, we want someone new or something vague like that. The law uses the phrase substantive case-specific rationale. Think about what that means. It has to be detailed, specific to that particular IG and the reasons for removing them.
And this brings us to a really interesting document, a letter from Hannibal Mike Ware, who was the chairperson of the Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency.
Oh yeah, this letter is key. It was sent to the White House Director of Presidential Personnel on the very same day the IGs were fired, January 24th, 2025.
Talk about bad timing, right?
Right. And in the letter, Mr. Ware mentions the email the IGs got telling them they were fired. And get this, the reason given in that White House email: due to changing priorities.
Changing priorities, seriously, that's it.
That's what it says. And it just sounds so general, compared to what the law requires, those detailed and case-specific reasons.
It's a huge mismatch.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that Mr. Ware himself seemed to realize this.
Yeah.
In his letter, he actually suggests that the White House should talk to their lawyers about this, because he's basically saying these firings might not be legal.
So he's waving a red flag right then and there.
Yeah. He even mentions the 2022 amendments to the Inspector General Act, implying that these changes make it even more important to follow the rules about notification and rationale. It's like the head of the IG's own counsel is saying, guys, I think we have a problem here.
Wow. So the concerns about this being illegal, it's not just coming from the IGs themselves, it's coming from within their own community.
Right. It definitely lends more weight to their lawsuit.
So it makes sense why these 8 IGs decided to take legal action. They're not backing down. You see comments saying they're not laying down, not going quietly, and they're not obeying in advance.
There's definitely a sense of defiance there.
They feel strongly about this. They see it as more than just a fight for their jobs. They want to hold the Trump administration accountable for what they see as wrongful terminations and unlawful firings.
It's a matter of principle for them.
And the YouTube commentary we looked at really drives that home, talking about how justice matters. It's like their motivations go beyond just themselves. They see it as fighting for the whole idea of oversight in government.
Exactly. At the core of it all, they're reaffirming their role as those cops on the inside, as the people's watchdogs. They're the ones who are supposed to protect against wrongdoing, make sure taxpayer money is being used properly. By filing this lawsuit, they're saying the rule of law applies to everyone, even the most powerful people.
So just to bring it all together for everyone listening, the core of this lawsuit is about 2 big alleged violations of the law. First, that Congress wasn't given that 30-day notice before the IGs were removed. And second, that the reason given, due to changing priorities, just wasn't good enough, legally speaking. It didn't meet the standard for a substantive case-specific rationale.
And the outcome of this case could have a huge impact. It could really determine how independent and how powerful these government watchdogs are going forward. If the courts side with the IGs, it'll send a strong message about those legal protections. It'll be a win for accountability and transparency.
It really makes you think about the whole system of checks and balances in our government. When you have these internal oversight mechanisms meant to keep things in check and they're challenged like this, it raises some big questions. What does it mean for democracy when these watchdogs are potentially silenced or removed without a really good, solid reason? This is something we all need to pay attention to and think about carefully.
It's a question for everyone listening. What happens if these IGs, the people who are supposed to keep things honest, feel like their jobs are on the line every time the political winds change? It undermines the whole idea of oversight and accountability. It's a crucial issue for our government and for all of us.
Absolutely. Something we all need to be thinking about.